Hi everybody, I'm Josiah and today we're going to talk about the greatest X-Men story ever. Or at least what I feel is the greatest, and it's also the shortest. Now, there are a lot of really great X-Men stories, but the one that always kind of comes back for me is, like I said, the shortest, and that is X-Men Days of Future Past. So this edition here is the big fat sort of treasury edition, you know, those omnibus style books. It's not technically either of those things, but it has a lot of extra stuff. So we're going to look at the original story and look at all that extra stuff to just kind of see how it all comes together in this big book. This collection includes Uncanny X-Men 141 and 142, the original story, annuals for Fantastic Four number 23, New Mutants number 6, X-Factor number 5, and X-Men number 14, the Days of Future Present story, Excalibur 52, 66, and 67, Wolverine Days of Future Past 1, 2, and 3, and Hulk Broken Worlds number 2. The original story starts in 2013 and goes back to 1980. So in 2013, the remaining X-Men are in a prison camp. They include Kitty, Colossus, Rachel Summers, Franklin Richards, Wheelchair Magneto, and Storm. They send Kitty Pryde's mind backward in time to her younger self via Rachel's powers. They're doing this to stop Mystique and her new Brotherhood of Evil Mutants from killing Senator Robert Kelly. The book is the best of Byrne and Claremont. Their tumultuous relationship working together really created some great stories, and it's their final real story. There is a Kitty Pryde Christmas story that came after this, but neither did better work than they did on the X-Men. Though they both had great stories, Claremont's New Mutants, for example, and Byrne's first run on Fantastic Four were really great, they never really matched what they did together. The second issue has the best tagline ever. In this issue, everybody dies. With that, I'm sold. The aspect of Kitty Pryde, this adult woman, a woman in her 40s, going back to her own body as a child, as a teenager, is very profound, and it deals with issues of aging that I can relate to now more as a woman. At least now as a husband and a father, I grow older, those things really have a deeper impact on me, and it really makes that short 2 issues of the story just even more deep and more profound. Now the sequels. This is where things get crazy, and unnecessarily so. Rachel Summers, Phoenix, is now a regular part of the X-Men world. Ahab, a very 90s cyborg pirate for some reason, chases her into the past and kidnaps Franklin Richards and Nathan Summers. Yep, Cable is a baby with giant tiny baby guns. So this all took place in annuals spanning X-Men, X-Factor, New Mutants, and the Fantastic Four. Things start with the Baxter Building reappearing, and the current Fantastic Four battles Jack Kirby-styled versions of the Fantastic Four. Future Franklin shows up. He's the one causing all this. Ahab is basically trying to make Rachel one of his hounds, as she was before, which he does do to Cyclops and Sue Storm at one point in the story. Franklin then attacks the New Mutants. X-Factor then comes into things, and it turns out Frank is looking for Rachel Summers. Adult Franklin keeps altering things and making people and things disappear kind of randomly. The X-Men show up, and it turns out future Franklin is actually dead. There are plenty of other details in there, Forge and Banshee, early Gambit, Thing being awesome, but it's just small moments that get lost in the focus on Rachel and Franklin, who you just don't care as much about those two. Though the tragic romance does connect in the final issue, overall the art feels very rushed and kind of sloppy, and there's an editorial out front that kind of addresses that, basically saying it was rushed, and there's reasons that Rob Liefeld didn't draw it, and a few different artists I think actually came to, at least on the New Mutants book, and or maybe the X-Factor, I don't know, but other than the X-Men one by Art Adams, which really stands out, the art is really great, detailed, that really hyper-detailed 90s style of art, and it just holds up really a lot better than the other books. It's not the best of Louise Simonson, who is really normally great. I love her work on X-Factor and some other books, but this one, it's just not there. Everything in this story just kind of makes it more complicated. The Fantastic Four being involved and the Franklin Richards thing is fun, and sort of fighting the Jack Kirby style characters is fun, but the rest is just kind of land. The one exception is the very end of this book, the fundamental things, with Wolverine and Jubilee. It is awesome. Written by Chris Claremont and penciled by Mark Heichel, Wolverine is telling Jubilee why the X-Men matter, which is great, because Wolverine cares about something, which is why Wolverine's great, because he pretends not to care, but then he really cares, and that's what's awesome. Franklin shows up, and Wolverine basically solves the whole thing by being gruff and his awesome self. So the Excalibur books, it's issues 52, 66, and 67, with 66 and 67 being sort of another version of Days of Future Past / Days of Future Present, and it has sort of funky names around those ideas, and again, it's just more of that same, and it's okay, but it just feels like padding to this edition. Fun as individual issues probably at that time, but for a collected volume, it just doesn't really maintain.
We have a story where Professor X is in the mind of Phoenix trying to figure things out. It has some good stuff and brings up Rachel's issue with her mother, which is also in the Days of Future Present story, and the nature of the Phoenix Force. Good work by Alan Davis and a great cover. First, there's a ton of text to catch you up. I mean a ton. This is where you see just how insanely complex things have become, and these stories just make them more so. So number 66, Days of Future Yet to Come. Widget is possessed by Future Kitty, so we are referring back to an awesome thing in a less awesome way. So current Excalibur can overthrow the Sentinels. Then in number 66, Days of Future Tense, they team up with Future Excalibur to fight lots of Sentinels. I love Alan Davis and his art, so I enjoyed the first issue, but he didn't do the art on 67, so for that reason, I connect way less with that one. It's just really cartoony and not as good. It's more of a straight line in terms of story and not as complex and insane as Days of Future Present, but it's also a lot more silly, so it kind of undermines the original story. It's not bad, but totally, absolutely 101,000,000% not necessary.
There is, of course, more Ahab, which made a great toy, and there's that. I don't think he's been around since, but hey, the action figure was awesome. Wolverine Days of Future Past. This is the one, if you said, what's the story, little Josiah, 10-year-old Josiah, what would you want to read? It would be where Wolverine was before all this happened. Why was he in Canada? How did Magneto get paralyzed? All those things. And this story tells you all that. But all that hype, all that buildup, it's just kind of meh.
Magneto is looking for Wolverine. Magneto and Jubilee convince Wolverine to join them for this special mission. Apparently Jubilation and Logan haven't spoken in a while. Psylocke is now evil and after Logan. So Wolverine gets his mind wiped. They have to go to the White Queen, who fixes it. We learn how Magneto gets in that wheelchair. He's essentially taking a bullet for Wolverine, really just overexerting himself. Like me, attempting to do anything athletic, I throw my back out by looking at Sport Ball. The art is by Joe Bennett, and it isn't bad. It's just not as good as Joe Murata, who was really the big X-Men artist that popularized that manga style of the early 90s. And we really learned a lesson here from the late 90s, right? You can just ask George Lucas. In the late 90s, you don't want a prequel for something from the 70s and 80s. It just doesn't work.
The Wolverine Days of Future Past story just kind of doesn't feel connected. It's maybe just an art style thing. It's sort of the feeling that it's very 90s-ish and less 80s, less John Byrne, Claremont, and more, modern creators. And the 90s stuff is great for the 90s, but it doesn't work when you're sort of trying to mesh it with a world, from almost 20 years earlier at that point, before I was even born. Now, the Hulk Broken World story at the end, it is great. It just feels like part of the original world that Claremont and Byrne created. It has this heaviness with a little bit of humor to it, that maybe you could argue that the original Days of Future Past kind of lacked, at least in the future sequences. It's kind of heavy, but here you really have that feel, the feel that they created in the original book, and I really enjoyed it. I just wish it were longer. Actually, this is what I would want the Wolverine story to be. This Hulk story, but kind of a Wolverine version.
This is without a doubt, other of course than the original Days of Future Past story, the best thing about this book. The art is by Juan Santa Cruz. It feels from another time. It's almost perfect for this story by Jason Henderson. It felt deeply connected to the original, yet could just exist on its own as a good standalone story. In short, Bruce Banner, in a prison camp, wants to awake the Hulk to bust out, and he does so to awesome effect.
If you like all this extra stuff, all this padding, get this edition. One cool thing, the best thing about this actually probably is, if you slide off this dust jacket, this is probably the best thing about this book. The great Art Adams here on the back with the super detailed, the best of the sort of Days of Future Present is right here. On the other side here, you have the original cover for the Everybody Dies issue. Now, if you want this whole volume with all this extra stuff, go ahead and get it, but I really recommend just finding the individual issues in back issue bins on eBay. You can find them all cheaper, and you can find the original collection of Days of Future Past pretty cheap as well. So tell me, what is your favorite X-Men story? What is your favorite time travel story, alternate reality story? Who was your favorite X-Men artist? Writer? I'm Chris Claremont, probably. John Byrne, should be, right? There's other great ones though. Who stands out for you? Who do you just really love? Why? What artist or writer made you read the X-Men, and what stories, particularly the time travel, the alternate reality stuff, what really grabbed you? Because there's a whole lot of those in the X-Men, as this volume attests to. There's a whole bunch. That's pretty thick right there. If you like this video, please hit the like button. If you really liked it, please leave a comment. And if you loved it, I ask you to subscribe. So remember, Josiah is right, and thanks for hanging out.